Good afternoon. My name is Jeannie Weeks, and I'm the Community Outreach Director for the Office of the Butler County Prosecutor, and I'd like to thank you for coming this afternoon as we present the next in our series on elder abuse from the Crimes Against the Elderly Task Force. Today, our speakers will be Michael Hughes, who is the family member of a victim of financial exploitation. We have Detective Greg Myers from the Moreau Police Department, Margot Halcomb from First Financial, and Bill Staler, the CEO of Lifespan. The Butler County Crimes Against the Elderly Task Force is being effective in the effort to bring together our law enforcement and service agencies and the business community that serves our elderly citizens. Everyone working together to bring awareness of how these schemes are committed is vital to our success. Soon after our hotline was announced, an elderly man called and to report that his wife had become the victim of a lottery scam. He had talked to law enforcement, they'd come to the house, they talked to the wife, and there was no convincing her that she had not won the lottery. These people would request that she send them money, and she would repeatedly. Finally, they discovered that she had sent over $30,000 to these individuals, waiting for that big payoff that was going to be dropped on her doorstep. They were going to bring a suitcase full of money and deliver it to her if she just kept sending them the money that they needed. Every time there was a different excuse. Finally, the husband called our office. He says, "I heard about your hotline. My wife is just giving away so much money. What can you do to help me?" So we had he and his wife into our office, and we spent over an hour trying to tell her, this is not real. You're losing your money. But she had become addicted to the scam and the lies that these people were telling her. So they left. Just a couple of days later, her daughter calls our office, so upset because the husband had cut off access to the funds that his wife had. He had taken away her car keys so she couldn't get to the bank and get more money. The wife had been using the daughter. "Mom, take me shopping. I need to do some Christmas shopping." So the daughter would take the mother shopping, and the mother would say, "Well, while you're over here looking at this, I'm going to go over here and take care of some of my needs." And what the woman was doing was buying the money cards in a retail store that when the scammers would call, all you have to do is give them the number on the back of this card, and you've just given them your money. And the daughter was beside herself. What can we do to stop this? And then they discovered that the scammers had convinced the woman of something she didn't even know she could do. She could take out cash advances on her credit cards as another way of getting money to them. So she did. Finally, we called Adult Protective Services and said, "Is there anything you can do to help this family?" And they sent out a caseworker, and they saw the volumes of boxes of mail this woman had been receiving from these people convincing her that she won the lottery. Eventually, they were able to find a guardian of her finances, and she no longer has control of her finances. But in the interim, all of their phone numbers have been changed, so the scammers can't get a hold of them anymore, and I can't follow up to see how the family's doing. This was a woman who had had a very successful business career. She had amassed a nice nest egg for she and her husband. She had bought investments, and they had a lot of money. And now the scammers have it, and she and her husband are at odds. She's not happy about having lost her financial well-being. That's just one way that our elderly people are being financially exploited. And that's what we're here to try to tell you. The scams that are out there, the ways you can protect yourself, and how it feels when you've been victimized. And to that, I'd like to introduce Michael Hughes, the wife of Michelle Hughes, who's second cousin.
I'm the husband.
Really? I'm sorry. I was just, okay, I was just making sure you guys were listening. Anyway, somebody from the Hughes family is going to come up here and tell you their story. Michael.
Thank you. Well, my name is Michael Hughes, and I'm going to tell you a story about a woman named Mary Rose Kemplin. Mary was my wife's second cousin, and her husband worked their whole lives to build the same type of nest egg as what Jeannie was talking about. Her husband worked for 40 years for AK Steel, and she worked for 30 years for NCR, and they were ready for retirement. They had a nice, comfortable retirement set aside. And in the year 2000, Arlie, Mary's husband, passed away. During their whole marriage, Arlie was the one responsible for taking care of the money. He paid the bills. He basically handled all of that. So Mary was a little naive about those things. And over the next 10 years or so, you know, she had help from, you know, her doctor's office's nurse, you know, helped her with things and stuff like that. But she didn't have any close family. She didn't have any children. She didn't have any brothers or sisters to help her with this stuff. She didn't have any close family. What she did have was her church. Her church was her sanctuary. That's where she spent all of her time. That's where her friends were. That's where her social life was. And she was befriended by a woman named Corinne Easterling. And Corinne told Mary that she was going through a divorce and she needed some place to stay. Mary, in return, needed somebody to stay with her. She was a diabetic. She had to take shots 4 times a day. Her diet was important. You know, she needed somebody there with her, so this seemed like a perfect scenario for her. So Corinne moved in with Mary, and being naive as she was about paying the bills and so forth, you know, upon Corinne's request, Mary gave her power of attorney. Well, when she gave her power of attorney, understand power of attorney by definition is just simply to act on somebody's behalf in their best interest. Well, Corinne didn't do that. Corinne acted in her own best interest. Over the span of less than 1 year, it was discovered that Corinne stole in excess of $217,000 from Mary Rose. Money that her and her husband worked for, money that was set aside for their retirement. And the only way that we discovered this was that a member of her bank called her and said, "Mary, your account's overdrawn." Now keep in mind, this was a woman who may have tens of thousands of dollars in her account at any given time. And you have this bank representative calling her, telling her that her account is overdrawn and she needs to come to the bank with a family member. Mary's closest family member was her cousin, my wife's mother. She went to the bank with Mary, and that's when we discovered that this woman had been stealing all of this money from Mary. And it wasn't a high-tech scam or anything. It was really quite simple. She could go into a bank and flash a power of attorney and an ID, and she had full access to Mary's funds just as if they were her own. And the truth of the matter is, a power of attorney, you know, can take on a couple of different meanings and a couple of different powers, but she gave her full power of attorney just because she simply didn't know any better. And she didn't have anybody really there to tell her, you know, be careful. You don't know this woman. You know her from church, but you don't know anything about her. The lesson to be learned here is that a power of attorney in the wrong hands is simply a license to steal. And that's exactly what this woman did. thanks to the hard work of the Butler County Prosecutor's Office and Mr. Moser in particular, this woman's in prison. And she's going to be there for 2 years. Not near long enough, but it's something. But the truth of the matter is, Mary died last year, and she died broken. She died embarrassed because somebody who she considered a friend, somebody she trusted, had the nerve to take from her such a massive amount of money in such a short period of time. And if it wasn't for that phone call from that guy at the bank, God knows, where we'd be right now. And if it wasn't for Mike Moser pursuing this woman and putting her in prison, she'd still be out there preying on possibly one of you. And all I would say, in terms of what we could have done to prevent such a atrocity, if you have a family member, a close family member, somebody who you trust, Mary didn't have that. Rely on those people. Make those plans early enough, to where everybody knows what you want and how your business is going to be handled. Talk to a lawyer, talk to the prosecutor's office before you assign anybody a power of attorney, because there's different kinds of power of attorney. There's limited power of attorney that would prevent people from being able to access your money, but gives them the right to do the things that are best for you. Ultimately, I think one of Mary's biggest drawbacks was she kind of isolated herself. She had drawn away from what little bit of family she had. She didn't have any really close friends, and this woman saw an opportunity and she preyed on her and she stole her life savings in a very short period of time. And it doesn't have to happen. It's all preventable. If you don't have a close family member who you can trust, a spouse, a child, a brother, a sister, there's lawyers, there's accountants, there's employees at banks who will be happy to help you with setting up your bill pay service and things like that. Trust is a very fragile thing, and it cost her a tremendous amount of money. But more than anything, it cost her pride. And it cost her what should have been her happiest years, So I would say just be cautious, talk to people, get advice, and as bad as it may sound, trust no one. Trust no one if we're talking about your money, if we're talking about your life savings.
My name is Detective Greg Myers. I'm with the East City Monroe Police Department. Putting on glasses here, I'm getting older. No, not a senior yet, but I'll progress there, and I'll be happy to be one someday. When I was asked to speak in regard to this, I was asked to speak in regard to scams and things of that nature, and things that I've seen and ways to prevent it. And one of the problems when I went to put this together was, my first heading is there are too many. There are too many to even tell you about or go into particulars on every single one of them. One of the things we see in law enforcement is as soon as we, it's like a snake with many heads. As soon as we cut off one head, it just grows another head. They learn ways to circumvent everything we're doing. The number of scams out there are so far-reaching and so many different, so multifaceted that I'm sure I've only seen a small portion, and every time I see a different one, it has some other facet to it that I haven't seen before. But the one thing that I see with all of them is I have to ask if the person would stop for a minute and think, why me? How did this person get a hold of me? What how am I benefiting from this? How are they benefiting from this? Some of the things we see, spoke about lottery scam. You have to think, who benefits from this? There has to be, with the Ohio State Lottery. We all know that the schools are supposed to benefit from this. There has to be somebody, there has to be money coming in and a small portion going out to a lottery winner. If you didn't enter a lottery and it's from some other country, how is it benefiting anyone aside from you? We all know that this doesn't work this way. We all worked way too hard for our money over too many years to have it just, just a windfall just come to us freely. There has to be somebody benefiting from this. Well, when you're sending money out to these people, they're the ones benefiting. Another scam that we see a lot right now is Western Union. We see that a lot. You'll get internet emails asking you to be a secret shopper. And they're going to send you a check. They want you to deposit it and send a certain amount of money. Keep $500 for yourself out of this $2,500. Send $2,000 back. Rate the performance of Western Union, and you get to keep $500. If we stop and we think about this for a minute, $500 for one time, that's pretty good money for doing one job. If Western Union really wanted to do this, wouldn't their money be a lot better spent sending one person or two people around the country to various locations? It's a lot cheaper to do it that. So, you have to look at dollars and cents. Is this reasonable? Is this reasonable for a company to do that? Another thing I've seen is how many people dealing with medication issues. When you get older, there's a lot of medications, and sometimes resources are limited to get medications, Medicare, Medicaid, so you look for cheaper alternatives. Sometimes it's out of the country, sometimes it's on the internet. Well, people sell these lists of your names, or they hack and get lists of names, things like that, where you have purchased things on the internet, medication. One of the scams that's come across my desk is they will contact you and they say, hey, this is Agent so-and-so from the DEA or FBI or whoever, and there's a warrant for your arrest. What you did in regard to this, buying this medication through the internet, is illegal. But I know you didn't mean to do this. So I'd like to go ahead and take care of this warrant, and we can keep it completely off the books and get rid of it before they come and arrest you. You simply need to send money. Send us some money and we'll take care of this. And when you do send money, they'll call you back and say, you know what, there were two of them. They know you bit once, they're going to try it again. They have nothing to lose. Just like the other situation here, the lottery scams, if you bite once, they're going to keep going until you quit biting. The vast majority of elderly people have never been in trouble, never had a warrant, and it scares them to death. They think, oh, I have to get this taken care of immediately. It's embarrassing. This is going to cause me a problem. I don't know how to deal with this. And they simply follow the steps the person gives. Another situation, and it's not financial, with the internet medication is you have to be very careful. Another thing we see is the counterfeit medication. And the medication itself is no good. It's coming from foreign countries. Who knows what's in it? Has all different kinds of things in it. It might look like the medication you're supposed to take, but it's not. There again, it's just another scam. They've sold you nothing. They've sent you something. You're happy, but it has no medical value to it. So again, they have your money. They have you on a mailing list. They might try the other scam later. These things multiply. Another situation I haven't had it come across my desk is your grandchildren are your favorites. You love them to death. You do anything for them. You get the phone call or you get an email, I'm in jail. I need you to help me right now. I got to get out of jail. Mom and Dad can't know about this. Something has to be done immediately and I can get out and I don't have to go to court if I pay this fine right now. You send this off. You find out later on, no one was in jail. There are so many. One of the things you have to look at and understand when you look at these things is how they're asking you to pay for things. That should be a red flag right there. If they're asking you to pay for things in ways that can't be traced, going and sending money through Western Union, going and getting a NetSpend card, a Green Dot MasterCard, things along those lines. If there's no way to trace these funds, that's a big red flag. You folks can help yourselves as much as we can. I love it when somebody's already compiled all kinds of things for me and they say, hey, I looked at this and I looked at that and I got on the internet and I messed around. If they have a phone number for you, call them back. Type in 464 or whatever the area code is. Type in 464 area code and see what pops up. You'll see something along the lines of Dominican Republic or someplace far off. You know it's not right. Look for things that don't fit, things that aren't right. I guess the last thing I could say in regard to this, I like to use analogies. If you smelled smoke in your house, you'd immediately investigate the situation. And if you couldn't figure it out yourself immediately, right away, you're going to call the fire department because you know you have to take care of it right then. Now, if you wait and stand back and you just keep waiting, and then you go outside and look and flames are coming through the roof, there's not much that can be done then. In the end, we'll be sifting through the ashes, but it's a total loss. So, we like to take care of things when we smell smoke. Call us. Call your local police department. Call bankers. Call anyone you can think of that might help you in regard to this. Have the number of the Butler County Elderly Abuse Task Force. Call that. They will refer you, even if it's not to, if you live in Middletown, they might send you to me because of a story I've relayed to them. And they might say, this has already happened to this officer, this detective already knows about this situation. Let him educate you a little bit on this, or let him look at this and tell you what's, whether this is real or not. Let them be the clearinghouse for you and disseminate your questions out to the other agencies and get them back and get back with you, or the other agency will get back with you. That's what we're here for, to work as a group. All the facets, banking, law enforcement, prosecutors, elderly assistance agencies, we all work together on this and we each have one area of expertise. So that's what we'd like to do, work together to help you. You have to understand with some of these scams, once things take place, once money has been sent out, once you have taken some action they want you to take, a lot of times it's irreversible, and a lot of times we really have no power to do things. We can't, when there's a scam from the internet and it bounces around 3 different phone numbers and it ends up in the Dominican Republic, we can't do anything with it except, hey, we're sorry about your loss and we can educate you about what took place and how it took place, but we can't do anything to get your money back. So we would much rather be proactive. Call us first. If you have any idea or question anything at all, call us and ask us. I'd rather deal with the situation to begin with and keep the money in your pocket and you say thank you and you send me a Christmas card next year than fill out a police report for you because the scam took place and I tell you that there's really nothing I can do. And sometimes that leaves a bad taste in your mouth because you think that's what I'm supposed to do. And it is what I'm supposed to do. But sometimes I'm powerless to do things. Sometimes the prosecutor's powerless to do things. The bank's powerless to do things. Help us help you. Let's attack things early if you think that anything is wrong. I'll be happy to tell you, hey, this is fabulous. This is great. It's wonderful. Everything looks wonderful. And I'll be happy to tell you, hey, this is a problem and we dodged a bullet here. So call the hotline and we'll certainly work, whatever agency, to facilitate and get an answer for you and make things a little smoother. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Margot Halcomb. I'm an attorney and vice president with First Financial Bank Wealth Management. And I'd like to take just a moment and thank Mike Moser, Jeannie Weeks, and the committee for creating and promoting this task force. I think it's a great benefit to the communities of Butler County. I'd also like to introduce Donna Caudell. She's with First Financial Bank's fraud department, and she works aggressively and successfully to bring solutions about. I'm here to talk about financial scams, and unfortunately, financial scams targeting seniors are on the rise. And with the advancement in technology, the scams look more and more convincing all the time. Increasingly, these scams involve caretakers and family members, as we've heard today, and people that the elderly trust. I will concentrate on 3 areas of scams against seniors. First, the power of attorney abuse. Second, phone calls and emails claiming that you have a compromised account. And then third, mailings that announce you are a winner. So first I'll talk about power of attorney abuse. Now, a power of attorney is a very useful legal document. It's a written authority giving one person power for another in usually financial affairs, bank accounts, investment accounts, transfer of real estate. As was mentioned before, these can be very limited power of attorneys or they can be general power of attorneys. But it's important to remember that you designate a very trustworthy fiduciary. We've heard today about Mary Rose and the very unfortunate incident that happened there. I will give you an example of another situation that happened fairly recently. Grandfather lived alone, very few relatives in the area, and one day suffered injuries that required an extensive hospitalization and rehabilitation, and he worried about who was going to take care of the house, who was going to take care of the bills while he was gone. He did have a grandson in the area that he wasn't particularly close to, but did trust him, and did give him power of attorney. It was a general power of attorney. And the grandson assured grandfather that he would take care of things. And he did at first. He took care of some of the bills and the house, and then he realized, well, he had access to take care of some of his debts and a new motorcycle. And by the time grandfather left that rehab center, most of his life savings was gone. You can replace grandson with caretaker or another family member. Sometimes it is a drug habit, a gambling habit, debt, or just good old-fashioned greed. But whatever the reason, the results can be devastating. In this situation, grandfather did contact an attorney. They were successful in recovering a lot of the funds. But certainly nowhere near where he should have been. It is really important, if you think that a loved one is being taken advantage of, that you contact an attorney right away. They can help with revocation of a power of attorney. They can help make demands for return of money. They can take legal action if necessary for conversion of breach of fiduciary duties. It's important to take action right away. I'm going to talk about next phone calls or emails claiming that you have a compromised account. And this is how it works. You receive an automated call identifying itself as your financial institution or your credit card company, and they state that your account has been closed or compromised in some way, and they need you to confirm your information, your account number, your PIN number, your personal information, social security number, date of birth. And once you do that, they have everything they need to do to take over your identity, misuse your accounts. This also happens with phishing attempts. You receive a fraudulent email. You're asked to follow a link on that email, and it directs you to a counterfeit version of your institution's website. Now again, with the advancement of technology, these counterfeit sites look very similar to what your financial institution might look like or your credit card website might look like. And again, you're asked to just confirm that information. So you log on and you give them all this information, and they could be completely out of the country and they'll misuse your information. It's important that you never respond to these emails. Delete the emails. Hang up on the phone call. You don't have to give them any information. Your financial institutions, your credit card companies, They have all the information they need. They will never request that information in that manner. It's important also to call the hotline and give them the information. Go to the bank. If you're still worried, go to your bank. Talk with a trusted advisor there and tell them what you've seen so that they can report it, and they'll also send out warnings to their other customers that this kind of abuse is happening. Lastly, I'm going to talk about mailings that announce you're a winner. And these letters can look very official. They can be quite deceiving. Usually they're enclosed with the letter as a check made out to you, and it's a certain sum, but of course there's always a catch. And my clients routinely submit these letters to me, and I act as a filter and review those, and they're getting used to how silly some of them are. I brought an example. It's here on the board. This is one of the letters that a client received just a couple weeks ago, actually. And at first blush, if you look at this letter, you see, okay, there's a photo of some winners. They're smiling. They're holding a big check. It looks rather intriguing. And the letter is signed, and it contains contact numbers, fax numbers, and you think, well, okay, you know, at least I could get a hold of someone if there's an issue. But if you look closer, you see that number one, it names a contest that you've never entered. You have no idea where that came from. The check is enclosed, but the letter asks you not to cash it. And then it says instead you're to send $1,985 immediately and directly to a tax agent. And they give some silly reason about taxes not being able to be deducted. But finally, and ironically, it urges you to keep the winning confidential. Don't tell anybody until the claim is processed, and this is to avoid double claiming or unscrupulous acts by non-participants taking advantage of the program. So you can see how incredible this is. Scam artists are incredibly bold, and they're incredibly aggressive in their tactics. Don't buy in, and whatever you do, don't respond. The best you can do is talk with someone you trust, a family member, a neighbor, pastor, director of your retirement community. Call the hotline and report it, because they can better communicate to others in the community if they know what types of scams are being circulated. That's all I have today.
Well, thank you. As Jeannie mentioned, I'm Bill Staler with Lifespan, and I want to thank the prosecutor's office and everybody else on the task force for initiating this whole process. This is a very important issue. We see enough financial difficulty in our community without people being taken advantage of through scams and unscrupulous activities. So I'm really pleased that we're addressing this as a community. And what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about Lifespan and tell you about some of the services that we provide that might be able to help in certain situations, and then maybe give you a couple of tips on some things that we see that might help you avoid or help some of your loved ones avoid financial scams and some of the problems that can be caused there. The first thing with Lifespan is that we provide referral services through the Butler County Elderly Services Program for seniors. So that covers a wide variety of things, from available in-home services to other agencies that provide services and that sort of thing. But our intake folks are trained on issues that deal with financial problems, so they do have referrals and could be another potential place for you to start. You've heard about a lot of different organizations, banks, the prosecutor's office, the police departments in the county. This is just another resource for you to be aware of, that if you do call the Elderly Services Hotline, which is 868-9281, we can make referrals to appropriate organizations that can also help. The other thing that we do is that we have a financial counseling program at Lifespan, and potentially using that service could help identify someone that's been a victim of a scam. More specifically, one that involves getting personal information and using that personal information to set up bank accounts, borrow money, anything that would be reported on a credit report, we can help you with. And that's one thing that we see in addition to some of the other scams that involve dealing with bank accounts or actually stealing money. There's also situations where people steal your credit card numbers. You've heard of situations where thieves, and you talk about creative. If these people would put in as much effort in earning an honest living as they do scamming people, they'd be probably just as wealthy. But you've possibly heard about situations where these little readers can be put over ATM machines, and when you scan your ATM card, the information on your card is captured, and the thieves can get your personal information that way. Even simply by looking over your shoulder and getting your credit card number when you use a credit card to pay for a service is another way that your personal information can be, and your credit card number can be obtained. So if they do that, they'll try to set up an account in your name using your Social Security number and your personal information, potentially borrow money, potentially open credit card accounts and borrow money that way. And all that information is on your credit report. So one of the services that we provide is a review of your credit report, and we can help you. We can walk through that, look at that with you, and help you determine if you've potentially been a victim of something like that. Now, we charge $35 for that, and for some people that's okay because they want that personal attention and review by someone who knows what they're looking at. But you can get your credit report for less than that through one of the credit reporting agencies. In fact, you can get it for free through annualcreditreport.com, which is the only place that we recommend people go to get their free credit report. So if you're comfortable in doing that, I would urge you to make sure that you're pulling a copy of your credit report at least annually, if not more frequently, just to make sure all the information is correct and that there isn't anything that's that doesn't look right or could potentially be a situation where someone has used your personal information and actually borrowed money in your name. Now, as you've heard, there are so many scams out there and so many different twists and turns that these people can take. It's almost impossible to cover everything. And in fact, just when we think we've kind of got our arms around a scam and understand how it works, there's a different twist to it. So what we like to do is we like to advise people to take as many proactive steps as they can to guard against most things that could potentially happen with you. And I know at Lifespan we've got policies and procedures that we follow every day, and what I'd recommend is that you have your own personal policies and procedures that you just don't violate, that are things that you just don't do. And here's just a couple. You don't give out your Social Security number to people that aren't legally required to get it. Now, there's certain people that are legally, that have a legal right to ask for it. Any taxing organization, government entities, your employer, there are people who are legally, it's legal for them to ask for your Social Security number. But somehow or another, over the last few years, our Social Security number has become a form of personal identification, and that's not right. So you want to guard your Social Security number. If someone asks you for that, ask them why they need it, and there might be something else, some other form of identification that they could accept in lieu of your Social Security number. use direct deposit if it's available. That way your check goes right into your bank account. You want to guard your passwords and make sure that you don't use obvious passwords like your birth date or the word password. You know, use a password that isn't obvious. You never give out your personal information to someone that calls you on the phone or requests it in an email. If they're legitimate, tell them you'll call them back, and don't use the number that they give you. Call them back on a number that you look up and is you know is going to that organization. As you've heard a couple times, you never send money if it's in response to an award notification that you're getting a gift or you've won the lottery. No one asks for that. No legitimate source asks for that money up front. And finally, when you get your bank statements, your credit card statements, open them up, balance them, review them, make sure that that information is correct. You'd be surprised how many people don't do that, and that just leaves people wide open to fraud. So thanks very much.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to add something quickly. These folks have covered many things, but one thing that you can read for yourself, if you go to ic3.gov, it covers all of this and more. It's the latest scams. It's put together by the FBI, and it's a website, ic3.gov, and it will really educate you in what the current scams are, what the old scams are. So I encourage you to do that, as well as the Federal Trade Commission has a website, ftc.gov. You can also file complaints on those websites if you've been a victim of that fraud. And thirdly, your bank if you are a victim of identity theft, we have something called red flags, which is a mandatory thing, and the bank representative will go over all those things with you to help you to get things back in order if you've had your identity stolen. So I just wanted to let you know about those websites. They're very interesting, they're very informative, so please take advantage of them. Thank you.
Well, once again, good afternoon, and thank you all for coming, and our listening audience. I want to make sure that we give credit to all of the spokes of the wheel for this task force. The prosecutor's office and myself are certainly proud members, but we have many members, as you can see from our presenters today. Law enforcement, of course, plays a very large part, and they're instrumental in identifying these scammers and bringing them to justice. My office prosecutes them. But overall, it is our belief that through education, we can all be proactive to reduce the scammers and reduce the toll that it has taken. As you can see from one of the presenters, the human cost is enormous. Law enforcement deals with this, I deal with it. And if you look into the eyes of somebody that has been scammed out of their life savings that they've worked so many years to acquire through their hard effort and their sweat, and then to have it taken because they trusted somebody. When you listen to the desperation in their voice and you see the grief in their eyes, it is just heart-rending. And we are doing, all of my partners, we are doing our utmost to bring the message to all of the citizens in Butler County, if not elsewhere. We have 368,000 people in this county to deal with, and we are doing our utmost with respect to the elderly to bring it to their attention. And this program will go on and it will continue. I want to make special note with respect to powers of attorney. There can be two types. There's the general power that gives broad, sweeping control over certain assets of an individual, as well as the specific powers of attorney that might be just limited to a couple of minor things that a person has to have done in their daily life. But with a power of attorney, the person who gives the power of attorney still does not lose control over their day-to-day assets. If they choose to look at their account, they have a right to see them. So one of the hallmarks of an abuse of a power of attorney is someone who is saying to the person that gave the power, no, I don't want you to see your account statements, or I'm not going to let you see your account statements, or I'm not going to let you inquire into how the bills have been paid. The second hallmark of an abuse of a power of attorney is when the fiduciary, that's the name that was given to by one of the presenters, to the person who has the power to do certain things on behalf of an individual. The fiduciary is not permitted to use the power of attorney for their own personal interests. They can't pay their kids' college bills. They can't buy their children's tennis shoes. They can't use that power of attorney for their own personal benefit. So when you see that happening, it should trigger in your mind that the power that you have given is being abused. So even though you've given somebody a power of attorney, be mindful that you can look at your checking statement. You can see what bills have been paid, see whether it's been for your benefit or for the benefit, wrongfully, of the fiduciary. And that's a key point that I want you to remember. Also, I want to thank WLW, who put on an interview yesterday. They were kind enough to call and give me an opportunity to exercise what I call the bully pulpit about this program. And they asked if the penalties were adequate. And in fact, the penalties are adequate. It's not the penalty part, it's the catching part. We certainly, when we catch them, we can deal with them, we can prosecute them, and we can bring them to justice, and in the Kemplin matter, we can put the wrongdoer in prison through our judges. However, the key to stopping this from happening, from the damage occurring, is the educational component. And that's what this program is designed to do. I was asked that question, and I looked at the statute dealing with identity fraud. And your identity is established by statute in many ways. Your personal identifying information under the laws of Ohio includes the following: your name, your address, your telephone number, your driver's license number, your commercial driver's license, your commercial driver's license number, your state identification card number, your social security card, your social security number, your birth certificate, place of employment, employee identification number, your mother's maiden name, your demand deposit account number, a savings account number, your money market account number, your mutual fund account number, other personal financial account numbers, personal identification number, your password, credit card number of a living person or a dead individual, and any other personal identification. That is what identity fraud is defined as, and the misuse of that information that I just said. So all of that information is important and critical for you to protect. So if you're going to give out that information to a scammer, you can expect to be scammed and you can expect to lose your money. Now, I think that it's also important for the general public to be aware that this is a program that is going to depend upon not only the elderly, but the children of the elderly and the grandchildren of the elderly, to protect them with respect to what's going on in their lives. It's like a neighborhood watch. You've got to watch out for your grandparents. You've got to watch out what they're doing, because they are trusting people. They want to believe in the goodness of man. They don't want to believe that somebody would actually take advantage of them and steal their last nickel. Those people that do that are sociopaths, or psychopaths as they're called. They have no conscience. So in order for the elderly to be protected, not only do the elderly have to be aware of what can happen to them, but so do their children and their grandchildren. And it's a community, and it does really take a community effort, and that's what this program is designed to accomplish. And if we can get this started and going in Butler County, by golly, I know it's going to spread across this country. Already, while we started this 6 months ago, you may be aware from some television advertising that MedicareFraud.com has a little TV commercial that says, "Protect your Medicare number." It's one of your identifying assets. It tells people who you are in so many ways. And if you give that information out, your Medicare number, which I'm pleading with you never to do, by phone especially, or unless it's particular circumstances where you're absolutely certain about the justification for it, and as I said, never by phone. If you can avoid doing that, there's a good chance that you're going to be not only not scammed with respect to a Medicare issue, you won't be scammed with some other financial issue that involves your savings accounts and things of that nature. So what we're asking you to do is pay important consideration to the question. You've got to ask the question, is it too good to be true? If you aren't going to ask that question of yourself, ask somebody who has no interest in the outcome of whatever claim you might be availing yourself of. If somebody doesn't have an interest in your lottery winnings, they're more likely to tell you, oh, don't believe that, that's some sort of a scam. So always ask the question of somebody that doesn't have any, as they say, skin in the game. Do you think I really won the lottery, Charlie? Gee whiz, they called and said I won this lottery, Molly. Should I take advantage of this? Well, if the person doesn't have any skin in the game, they're probably going to give you the straight answer of, heck no, that's not legitimate, you're being scammed. Oh, I am? Well, gee, thanks for telling me. And it's because we all of us that are good, decent people want to believe in the good and decency in others. And we want to believe also that we're special. We're so special that we won something by chance, that somebody's just calling out of the blue to say, we won the lottery. The Postal Service right now, I can tell you, is every day issuing money orders to people who come into the post office and say, gee, I won the lottery and I need a money order to send off this money in order to obtain the proceeds of the lottery I won. And they are taking a proactive approach to this, I know, in the Postal Service, to say to these people, you better think twice, ask somebody else before you do this, because this may be just one of those scams. And they're actually directing them to our hotline, and we're going to be happy to tell them about this type of a scam that's going on out there.
I just wanted to remind everybody about the contractor fraud. Next week on Tuesday, from noon to 1 p.m., we're going to be specifically addressing that particular issue. We will have people from the insurance industry here to help you identify what is a good contractor, what you can expect from your insurance company. So we hope you can attend next week. Thank you.